car. They live in the same apartment. There's no competition. Nothing's taking place. Here's what you need to be doing. And there was an NGO that Reagan was one of the founders, I think in 1983, called the National Endowment for Democracy, that was started in early 80s. And they're going on saying free speech, free market, civil society, rule of law. Gorbachev is watching saying maybe it's not a bad idea. And in 1990, Gorbachev accepted Germany's reunification and its continued membership in NATO under the explicit condition that NATO would not expand past Germany. NATO says you don't have to worry about it.
And there's the first violation right there. I mean, we told not past Germany. NATO won't go past Germany. Look where we're at today in NATO. Like, come on, we're talking about crossing lines here, right?
That NATO would not expand past Germany. NATO says you don't have to worry about it, even to the point that U.S. Secretary of State Jim Baker, German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher made verbal assurances, I give you my word, verbal assurances to Mikhail Gorbachev in February of 1990. Baker was famously known for saying that NATO would move not 1 inch eastward, beyond Germany. So imagine you're Russia, you're Gorbachev, we made a great deal. Hey guys, let's make this work, totally fine. We're willing to accept capitalism. We're willing to accept some of the democracy, Western way of living. We'll take it, but let's make a deal. Yeah, listen, you ain't got to worry about it. We're going to be okay. This is what we're going to do. And then later on, it changed. Now, keep this in mind. When you're saying not 1 inch eastward, look at the map now. Not
like, bruh, they're wilding. That's what I'm saying. It's like at a certain point, you kind of got to blame NATO because they were supposed to stop right here. They were supposed to stop right here and be cool with that. Nope, they went even further and further and approached on Russia's border. Yeah, I mean, do you see the problem? Do you see the problem now?
Not 1 inch eastward of Germany. Look who now they expanded to. What do you think you're going to be thinking about if you're Russia? What's Russia's priority? Russia. So you just made a deal and then you're looking at this map saying, hey guys, what the hell are you doing? Well, what happened to Margaret Thatcher? Jim Baker? What happened to Kohl? What happened to the German chancellor? All these promises. What is this all about? Right? So this is where it's like, wait.
So like, come on now. Let's have some, I would say, understanding of what's going on with Russia and why they're doing this. Pretty much we told them, NATO, not we, but NATO told them, don't worry, bro. We ain't going to even go past Germany. Fast forward to 2023. And like I say, Putin wakes up on a beautiful morning in Russia and he looks out and he sees the map of NATO and he's like, hey, yo, what the hell are y'all doing? It's been years on years and you guys are still expanding NATO. Why? You made promise to us that you wouldn't do it. And now y'all are even bold enough to try to bring in Ukraine? Do you see the problem?
Well, maybe these guys are not keeping their word. Now, let's go back again, 1991. The Chicken Kiev speech refers to an address by President Bush, George H.W. Bush, on August 1st, 91, set to Supreme Soviet Union of the Ukrainian SSR in Kiev. In the speech, Bush cautioned against suicidal nationalism. Hey, guys, Ukraine, it's a suicide. If you want to kind of talk about Ukrainian nationalism, you've been part of these guys for all these years, but this is a suicide mission you're on. You sure you want to do this? You don't want to do it. We want to do it. Are you positive? We want to do it. It's a suicide mission you're on. They're going to come after eventually. No, we're going to do it. That's the warning that Bush gave to them at that time. Yeah. And I keep in mind, the timing of this is interesting because this is August 1st, 91. And then December 1st, 91, 3 months later, over 90% of Ukrainians voted.
Even in the Bush era, we told Ukraine, like, yo, if you try to make that move, Putin's on your ass. Like, you know that, right? And they said, okay, cool. We were cool with that. We're over here looking at them like, I don't think you heard me right. Like, I mean by on your ass, I mean, they will invade you. They will take land, kill people. Like, do you get what I'm saying? And they just looked that man dead in the eyes and they was like, yep, we get it.
So think about the timing. He's saying, you may not want to do this, this whole nationalism, because in Ukraine at the time, they had the Azov battalion, which part of it they had built that was the Nazi symbol with the wolf sign. We've seen these before in documentaries. He's saying, guys, you're making a mistake. Do not do this. He's warning them. Shortly after that.
And shout out to my man Lincoln. He said, how about watching the Vox video, Putin's War on Ukraine, explained in 8 minutes? Sure, no problem. I got you right after this one.
We're talking exactly 9.
Hold on, and shout out to my man Lincoln, a supporter and I would like to say a naysayer because you always do go against what I say, but I like it though. I like it. You stand firm on what you believe. I give it to you.
18 days later, on December 20th, Boris Yeltsin in 91 writes a letter after the dissolution of Soviet Union. He sent a letter to NATO suggesting that Russia was open to the idea of joining the alliance. Think about this. Russia.
I mean, even Putin admitted that during the Tucker Carlson interview that, yeah, he tried to join NATO his damn self. He's like, I tried to join NATO. I asked Bill Clinton if I can join NATO. Therefore, okay, cool. If I am in NATO, then Ukraine can be in NATO and y'all can get what y'all want, right? What you guys want is Ukraine and NATO, and you can get both of us in NATO. That's literally what Putin offered these guys. And they looked that man dead in his eyes and just said, nope, because you're the enemy, you're the new Germany, and you're going to create the next world war.
Is open to joining the alliance. Yeltsin framed the request as part of Russia's effort to foster closer relations with the West and to establish itself as a democratic nation. Now, the obvious question will be, what did NATO say? Well, NATO is not going to respond to them. They didn't. They're like, oh, okay, cool. That's nice of you to want to do this. But if we kind of do this, we built NATO specifically to go against you. If you now join us, now we're not needed. If we're not needed, what are we going to do with military-industrial complex? That's a big business model, making billions of dollars. Peace is not a good business model if you're selling weapons. Why would we want peace? Don't tell anybody this. Let's just kind of let this thing go. We know Yeltsin's trying to get some peace stuff going over here. No. NATO was shut down. Then what happens? A lot of people didn't want that. Now, keep in mind, when 1991 was going on, that whole nuclear weapons that we talked about that Ukraine had leads to the Budapest Memorandum 1994, in which Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for security guarantees from Russia, UK, and US. And at the time, when Ukraine declared independence of Soviet Union in 1999, it inherited the world's third largest nuclear arsenal, 1,700 nuclear warheads for intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, and strategic bombers. They gave it back. They just said, make sure you protect us. Again, this is the part where they go back and forth. Fast forward 2 years later, Ukraine writes their first post-Soviet constitution in 96 with the help of US. Then again in 2000, similar to what Yeltsin said, 9 years prior to that, Putin comes out and says, look, in an interview with BBC, they would consider joining NATO if it were treated as an equal partner. However, this was more of a rhetorical statement to gauge NATO's willingness to engage with Russia on equal terms rather than a formal proposal. Now, here's what's interesting. There's a clip of Tucker interviewing Putin where Putin explains, when Clinton was here right next door, I asked him, I said, hey, what do you think about the idea of us joining NATO? He said, that's an interesting idea. Let me talk to my team. Then they go and he talks to his team and they come back and says, no, not right now. Maybe later on. That's a conversation that took place between Clinton and Putin that he talked about on Tucker. So even though he may have been interested, NATO was not interested in having Russia join NATO. Why? It's a fair question for you to ask. Why wouldn't they want him to join NATO? Would it eliminate the idea of NATO? What would happen there? Again, moving along with the timeline. This is 2000. He's asking to join NATO. Then 9/11 happens, which is a year and a half later. When that takes place, Putin comes out publicly being one of the first leaders to give solidarity and willingness to cooperate with U.S. in combating terrorism. He was reportedly the first leader to call President Bush on the day of attacks, expressing condolences and the support, emphasized that Russia understood the pain of terror, referencing Russia's own experiences with terrorist attacks, particularly in Chechnya, but Putin condemned the attacks as a barbaric act of terrorism against innocent people and offered Russian solidarity with the American people. Then 2 months later, November of 2001, he supports the
That's what I mean by we used to be cool with Russia. We used to be cool. But now we're not.
U.S. in Afghanistan. Putin backed the U.S.-led military intervention in Afghanistan to dismantle al-Qaeda and Taliban. Russia provided crucial logistic assistance, including opening Russian airspace for U.S. and NATO flights. Think about that. Most people forgot that. That's 23 years ago. They're sitting there saying, hey, we know you guys are doing this. Whatever you need, we're here to help you. Think America, Russia, whatever you need, we're helping you in NATO. We don't hear this story often when that took place, when they're helping Afghanistan, right? Facilitating the use of Central Asian bases by U.S. forces, sharing intelligence on Afghanistan terrorist networks. Putin's never been a fan of terrorist organizations, and he's openly described terrorism as a common enemy of both Russia and the U.S., signaling a shared commitment to global counterterrorism. This is good. This is 23 years ago. So at this time, November 2001, America's like, oh, okay, he's helping us out. Afghanistan. This was cool. We're getting his support.
And this is where I say it's like, I mean, I kind of try to paint this man as he was just the worst villain ever. But there's been times he came clutch for both the United States and NATO. Yes, came clutch for the people, that is running a fear campaign against him. And then the same people that has been approaching, that pretty much violated their agreement. Gave them both, clearance to fly through their airspace so they can get the drop on these guys. But they don't talk about that. But, oh, no, he's been a villain throughout time. He ain't did nothing for nobody, right? The same story they told you about Donald Trump, right?
2 years later, it's like, listen, guys.
And I'm not saying that Putin's just a good guy. I'm just saying we just can't act like Russia's just been the enemy forever now. I'm not saying that I agree with his government, but you do got to sit there and give the man his props. It's not like he didn't try to join NATO. He did. He tried to give he tried to give NATO what they wanted. Hey, NATO said no. So think about when we say that this is NATO and Ukraine's fault, this is our argument.
What's the story with this Iraq war? What are you guys doing with the Iraq war? I'm not with it. Invasion of Iraq, seeing it as a destabilizing and outside the scope of counterterrorism. Now he's not showing support to some of the stuff that's going on. And how much did Iraq cost us? How much money? How many troops died? Then the color revolutions, the U.S. support for pro-democracy movements in former Soviet states such as Ukraine, Georgia, heightened Putin's suspicion of Western intentions. Like, wait a minute, guys, what are we doing? I'll give you support, but don't think for a moment I'm naive. What are we doing here? I'm not with this, and I'm not with this. Don't blindly take my support that you can now do anything, and I'll back you up. And in NATO expansion, even more going into Eastern Europe, guys, at this point, we have a problem. You're not showing that you want peace here. You're showing that you want to paint me as an enemy, and how much more can I go sitting here wanting to make things good with you guys, but you guys keep pushing the...
And that's pretty much what it is. They were baiting Putin into this. Like, we've been told Putin that, yeah, we weren't going to go past Germany. Do you remember that part? Okay, cool. We told Putin we're not going to go past Germany. We have violated that on many, many levels. So, like, who are we to pretty much sit there and put all the blame on Putin? Like, does that really make sense in y'all heads? Like, you truly be honest with yourself now. Now that you know the history and the backstory.
The envelope. Now, this leads to 2004, 2005 Orange Revolution. You may have seen this documentary before. I think Oliver Stone did a good documentary on this. Protests in Ukraine were sparked by widespread allegations of electoral fraud during the 2004 presidential election, where Viktor Yanukovych was initially declared the winner over Viktor Yushchenko, but twice this happened, 04 and 14. However, demonstrations, civil disobedience, civil resistance, strike actions, revolt ordered by the Supreme Court of Ukraine that Viktor Yushchenko declared winner. At the same time, who had their hands on this? Couple NGOs. One of them was the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED, and the other one was the Open Society Foundation, which you know who that's a part of, George Soros. So it gets a little bit tricky here. Wait a minute, this guy wins, but you're not happy with him because this guy had no desire. Viktor Yanukovych, who had a decent relationship with Putin, had no desire to be part of NATO. And they're like, no, we don't want that. We want Ukraine to be part of NATO. Now imagine you're Putin. Wait a minute. All these promises, you want me to sit here?
Nah.
You just crossed the line.
Nah.
We now officially have a...
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, bro, who would have took that? Like, who would have sat there and just kept taking that disrespect? It's like, hey, you're just going to keep moving and moving and moving and keep moving over here. As I'm telling you that, yo, I don't want this to happen, but y'all just keep doing it. It's like, this is what we said, that, yeah, it was NATO and Ukraine that pushed Russia into this. We're not saying this out of like what hatred for, like, we're not saying this out of hatred of Ukraine or support of Russia. We're saying this because this is the facts here. Like, sorry, but this is the fact of the matter. Like, I don't care how you want to spin it. Yeah, well, NATO definitely would try to pull Russia's whole card, and Russia, well, hit him back. NATO tried to poke the Russian bear in the cave, and the Russian bear came out to play. Now everybody's all scared and panicking, going like, "What are we gonna do?" I mean, what? Why were y'all poking him for this long?
You want me to sit here? You just crossed the line. We now officially have a problem. That's why his motives are where they're at. Now, at the end of this, 2008, 2012, Putin steps down. Dmitry Medvedev comes in because at the time they only had a two-term. Of course, later on it changes. But he steps down and tens of thousands of people participate in the 2011, 2012 Russian protests, also known as a snow revolution. Protests took place across major cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, with chants like Russia without Putin and United Russia is the party of crooks and thieves. Now, the Bolotnaya Square protests in Moscow were among the largest since the 1990s. Now, here's where it gets tricky. So these guys are protesting to not be for Putin, right? And in America, NGOs can pay people to protest. We don't have a law against that. It happens all the time. And it's a regular thing. Open society's been behind it. Putin says, wait a minute, you guys want to pay these guys? This is allegedly, and some people can verify this, you guys are getting paid to protest against me, so you make me look like an idiot in Russia? No problem. I'm going to come back in and I'm going to make sure anybody that's taking money from any NGO, whether it's the National Endowment for Democracy or it's a USA, the United States Agency for International Development, anybody that's taking money from NGO, you have to declare it to everybody. You can't just go out there and take the money and fool the
weak. Yes, pretty much you gotta walk up on them and be like, hold on, are you really against Putin? No, but somebody paid me like $500 for him. Here, G. I mean, shoot, you pay me 500, boy, I'll say anything. I'll say F Putin, even though I love this man. I'm like, hold on, what? Yeah.
The average Russian voter not realizing what's really going on. By the way, you may or may not agree with whatever Putin's doing, but are you for NGOs paying people to be actors going outside, making a lot of ruckus, confusing the American people, and the media comes and says, oh, look, they're all against the president. They're all against the president. Look at all this stuff. Do you want to be manipulated? Do you want the American people to be manipulated? Because it happens in America all the time. He sits there and says, I'm not with the guys. You're not doing that. I think I need to come back. Now, imagine during this time, 2008, 2012, Putin's watching everything that's going on around the world. You have a lot of time, right? It's like, wait a minute, what's going on over here? What's going on over there? What is all this stuff? He's done, right? Assuming he's done. And he sees the global uprisings, Arab Springs, 2010, 2011. Well, what happened to Middle East leaders like Ben Ali from Tunisia, Mubarak from Egypt, or Gaddafi, Libya? Even in the documentary, Putin's...
I don't know, Gaddafi was effed up. I mean, the way they did my man Gaddafi was effed up, bro. All he wanted to do was create a United States of Africa and, you know, turn his dollars and turn his money to, and have his currency be connected to gold and create his own bank. And apparently, if you do that, you get killed. Oh, shit. I mean, and sodomized on video.
Revenge. Julia Loaf, who is part of that documentary, says that Putin is said to have been deeply affected by the way Muammar Gaddafi was killed. He watched a video of a bloodied Gaddafi dragged from his bunker, sodomized and shot over and over and over. Think about it. He's watching. It's like, wait a minute. What are they doing to a guy like this over and over? And he thinks he is doing everything to avoid a similar fate.
And shout out to my man AJ, and he says, can we watch the Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson podcast during the social hour? Russia does great work in Africa. They help get France base out of Africa. Yeah, they did. It was a Nigeria specifically. And this, bro, France was doing them dudes dirty. I mean, they're pretty much draining these guys of their high-grade uranium and then not letting the people of Nigeria benefit off it at all. At all. I mean, we're just going to sap your resources and you get nothing as we pretty much send your people into slavery. I know, right? France, the nerve. But yeah, the people uprise against them, got that government up out of there, and now it is a Russian level. Obviously, it's a Russian supporting country. Yeah, I know. They kicked out the France and went straight to Putin.
He's doing the opposite. This is the report.
I mean, you know, it's actually funny. This is what JFK feared. JFK did fear African countries turning to Putin because Putin was, well, not Putin, but Russia was trying to sell the story to black men that, oh, well, look how these guys did you over here. If you come over here, man, we'll treat you right. We treat your countries better than America treats, African countries. I mean, they were trying to talk sweet to us, and JFK got in the middle of that and was like, hey, yeah, no, we ain't doing that.
That's being given by Julia. He's watching all this stuff taking place. When he got killed, Gaddafi, it was October 20th, 2011. So this is the 4-year span that he's not running Russia. And he's saying, this is kind of weird. They went after Saleh from Yemen. Then he saw the color revolutions with what happened with Georgia. He's saying all these post-revolution, Orange Revolution, then overthrows.
Oh, and I got you with the video, man. I'm going to try to play it at the end because last time, that's what got hit. That's what got hit with the copyright.
All these things that's going on, this is influencing Cam to sit there and say, wait a minute, the fear of Western influence saw these moments as U.S.-led effort to destabilize authoritarian regimes. He knows what he is. It's not like he's debating it. He knows what he is himself. Domestic parallels with Russian protests, shared traits with these uprisings that is being paid by NGOs. All of this influences him to say, like, look, whether he wanted to come back all along or not, nobody knows, only he knows that. But all of this says, hey, no, listen, Dmitry, you're a good guy, but I think you're maybe a little bit of a pushover. This is Russia. I'm going to come back and defend this is my place. There's no way I'm going to let this happen to Russia. I'm coming back to clean house.
I'm weak. He basically looked at that dude and says, I ain't gonna lie, bro. You too much of a pussy right now. Like, we need a real Russian that's going to stand up for Mother Russia. He literally looked over and be like, yeah, you're a pussy. I'm like, all right. It's Putin up next, and that's exactly what happened. And it's actually crazy. I don't know anything about Russian politics. Why? Because the man's basically a dictator, and he runs it with with, like I said, maybe like 5 to 8 people. Shout out to oligarchy, right?
And that influenced him to come back. Now, right after Gaddafi dies, October 20th, 2011, month and a half later, December 4th, 2011, Putin wins. When he wins, he's going to come back and be the president. Hillary Clinton gets out there and says the following. In that time, says, as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton criticized Russia's parliamentary elections, calling them neither free nor fair, which reportedly angered Putin. So he comes back.
Oh, yeah. So now we just believe Hillary now. Well, back in the day where she was somewhat credible. Yeah, that makes sense. Man, it's always got to be a Clinton.
And there's a few things he does immediately. It says, number one, he cracked down on dissent, restricted NGOs, used anti-Western rhetoric to undermine opposition. Putin blamed protests on foreign interference, particularly from U.S., and accused Western-funded NGOs of inciting unrest. A law passed in 2012 requiring NGOs receiving foreign funding to register as foreign agents. Think about it. You're getting money for an NGO. You have to come out and say, hey, guys, I'm a foreign agent. If you didn't, you're breaking the law. Something very weird that you need to know about. February of 2008, the current CIA director under Biden, William J. Burns, at the time was a U.S. ambassador.
I mean, can we get that? Like constitutionally, like of course, like, but can we do that? Can we make these guys like being paid to protest so people know what it is and they can see the fake outrage? Just ask them like, wait, are you here to? Are you paid? And they'll at least tell us yes, and we can all know that it's BS and we'll all walk away. Like, so can we get that without violating any parts of the Constitution?
Ambassador to Russia authored a confidential cable titled Niet means Niet, Russia's NATO enlargement red lines. In this document, the current CIA director, former ambassador to Russia, he conveyed Russia's strong opposition to NATO's eastward expansion, particularly regarding Ukraine and Georgia. He highlighted that Russia's officials viewed such enlargement as a potential military threat and a violation of their security interests. Burns warned that pursuing NATO membership for Ukraine could lead to an internal divisions, violence, or even civil war, potentially compelling Russia to intervene. This is February of 2008. Right now, we're what?
Bro.
November?
February of 2008, they already knew what was going to happen. A lot of people predicted that, if Ukraine tries to get into NATO, Russia been told us that it's going to be on. The fact that we keep trying to push Ukraine into NATO is absolutely stupid because we know what's going to happen. Now, the American people may not know what's going to happen, but people in our government knew damn well what was going to happen. Now, do you see why we say it's NATO and Ukraine? Like, you're hearing me out now? Now that we have the full history of it, right?
November of 2024, 16 years ago, current CIA director, former ambassador of Russia, saying, guys, what are we doing? What are we doing? 16 years ago, this guy knew what was going to take place and is given a warning to U.S. They're like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And by the way, you know who was president in 2008? Obama, 1 month after inauguration, saying, don't mess with these guys. It could backfire on us. Boom. Now, many will say we're on the brink of World War III.
Even Obama said it. And we don't really agree with Obama here, but I'll take him on that one. Even Obama said, hey, yeah, we shouldn't be messing with them on this. They're hardlining on Ukraine. We already done effed up by going past Germany, and we're lucky they ain't stepped up about that. We're lucky they just didn't start invading every country on the line of, going past Germany. We're lucky they didn't do that. The fact that they're just doing this with Ukraine, I mean, shout out, because they're only doing it off the historical context. But if they did it off the, agreement, the verbal agreement that we gave them, this would be we'd be in a very difficult place right now. I mean, it would be a very, very tough place.
If one of those hypersonic weapons, their missiles they're sending has a nuclear bomb in it, guess what happens then? Game changer, right? Now, you remember in 2004, that whole protesting that took place when the two victors were running, Yushchenko, who wanted Ukraine to be part of NATO, and the other victor, which was Viktor Yanukovych, who was like, no, we don't need to be part of NATO. I will have a better relationship with Putin. Guess what? Yushchenko becomes president from 2005 to 2010 for Ukraine. This is the third president of Ukraine. Then the other victor, who's kind of like, nah, I have no interest in being part of Ukraine. He then becomes president. 2010 to 2014, he now is the president. However, protesting in Ukraine gets so bad in November of 2013, after Yanukovych refused to sign an EU association agreement favoring closer ties with Russia, many Ukrainians, especially in the west and center of the country, supported EU integration as a pathway to economic reform, democratic governance, and escaping Russia's influence. Anger at Yanukovych's perceived corruption and authoritarianism drove public discontent. It was so nasty that he had to leave, and he was no longer safe being in Ukraine. I believe he escaped to Russia, if I'm not mistaken. So if you keep in mind, while this is taking place, the West is saying, oh, no, this is all organic. It's what these people want. They want this. They want to join NATO. They want a better relationship with EU. They don't want to have anything to do with Russia. Putin saying, no, these people are not real. They're getting paid. And so the lady from the frontline
I mean, and yeah, that's the double-sided part. Is like, is the U.S. media selling that, oh, no, they got him out there to protest. They actually went against it. And then is Putin pretty much saying, hell no, these are people who got paid to do this. It's like, that's it. That's it. They got paid through, well, a couple of our organizations, surprisingly. Well, honestly, unsurprisingly. This is what we do. This is what we do, guys. I mean, America, guys, this is what we do. I mean, we send money around the world to overthrow governments that we don't agree with. I know. I mean, we've been doing it for a while now. So this shouldn't surprise you.
Documentary done, Putin's Revenge. She went on the streets asking the people in Ukraine who were protesting, hey, did somebody pay you? And you know what many of them said? Yes, we were paid. She has nothing to do with this. She's frontline, PBS, doing a documentary, Putin's Revenge. No, a lot of these guys were paid by NGOs to go out there, make it seem like they wanted the other guy. This is your part where you get to pick and choose and believe who you want to believe. Some say, no wonder this happened. US and NGOs are being involved to make sure there's a fall because they don't want more peace there, because they want a guy that wants to join NATO because we need a bigger enemy to keep going after them. This is business for us, right? Again, this is all allegedly. You get to pick and choose which argument you want to believe. So now the next 8 years, you know what happens? It's the back and forth of Russia against NATO and each finding ways.
And you know what? It's kind of crazy because even if the Ukrainian people actually wanted this, it's kind of sad because, this was kind of what's leading to their destruction as of right now. So let's just say that it was all organic. Let's just say that, yeah, they did actually hate that guy. They did want him up out of here because they didn't like the fact that he was cool with Putin. Let's say that's true, okay? Now, how does that make the situation any better for them? Like, really think about that. How would that have changed what we're seeing today? Recognizing that, like I said, and here's the thing, though, this is what y'all believe. So obviously nothing would have changed. Obviously, we'd have still been here at this conclusion.
To piss the other one off. And this happens for 8 years. NATO expands its presence in Eastern Europe, which is Poland, Estonia, Latvia. Military exercises. NATO's doing these large-scale military exercises, such as Defender Europe or Trident Juncture. At the same time, Russia's responding and doing its own military exercises. The Zapad exercises, showing them the fact that, hey, we're ready for simulating large-scale conflict with NATO forces. Then there's allegations of cyber attacks from Russia to NATO members such as Ukraine and others, like the NotPetya attack of 2017, and then disinformation campaigns from both sides. Meanwhile, Ukraine growing NATO aspirations, declared NATO membership as a strategic goal in 2019. Again, can you imagine? It's like, wait a minute, what are you guys doing here, right? Enshrining it in its constitution. NATO provided increased financial and military assistance to Ukraine. Russia viewed NATO's growing relationship with Ukraine as a direct threat to its security, citing NATO's 2008 Bucharest summit declaration that Ukraine and Georgia would eventually join the alliance. This keeps going back and forth, and it's getting more and more heated. Again, this leads to 2021, the military buildup near Ukraine. Russia amassed.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. Putin took enough smacks to the face till it became too much. Like, all right. So I can't control what you do with these other countries, but I can damn sure control Ukraine, and that's what he's standing on.
Were 100,000 troops near Ukraine border in late 2021, citing security concerns, opposing NATO's continued expansion. NATO and Western leaders accused Russia of preparing for an invasion. Then this comes to December of 2021. Russia makes its demands that a guarantee Ukraine would never join NATO and removal of NATO military infrastructure from Eastern Europe. NATO rejects those demands, affirming Ukraine's right to determine its alliance.
Another reason why it's NATO's fault, because Putin made its demands. It's like, dog, just move your soldiers off there and like everything will be cool. We could write a peace deal right now. Your soldiers stay off there. I ain't got to worry about NATO. You ain't got to worry about me. And that's that. But like I said, they're trying to paint a villain here.
They're now backtracking on their promises that they had. And a couple months after that request, guess what happens? war. So at the end of the day, the question becomes motive. What is NATO's motive? What is US's motive? What is Ukraine's motive? What is Putin's motive? Everybody's motive, right? They can tell us whatever they want that we see all over TV and news and all these experts that are speaking, but you and I have to study history for ourselves, for yourself. Say, yeah, I don't know, what is their motive? Because motive for Russia could be, if you look at this map from 1500s of what happened to Russia from then, where Fedor was there, then Boris and all these guys, all the way up, you see how much territory they got. And when you think about Ukraine was under Russian or Soviet control for 337 years, from 1667 to 1991. All right, so Russia's motive is to say what? Ukraine is really ours. What are you guys talking about? This is none of your business. This is our property. What are you doing? And then NATO's point may be, well, Yeltsin was easy to negotiate with. He was a bit of a pushover, nice guy. He was like a globalist. Maybe we could have worked with him and done some of the stuff that we wanted to do. Dmitry was kind of easier. This guy, Putin, is a true believer, and we got to get rid of this guy because he's in the way. Because if NATO and US really wanted peace, why don't you allow him to join NATO? And if you do, you put certain guidelines in place. Yes, we want to entertain you being part of NATO. Well, we need.
And let's be real. That's another reason why you can blame NATO. Why didn't y'all just accept Putin? I mean, Putin would have been on your side, and Ukraine would have been able to join as well. And let's be real, then there'd have been no reason for NATO. We'd have just had one. NATO wouldn't have been a military alliance. It'd have just been one big peace deal. Why didn't we turn NATO from a military alliance into a peace deal? Doesn't that sound way better?
You to do boom, 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 boom. Why don't you do that? Why isn't that conversation taking place? Why? Is it because the people that are given the money are tied to maybe some of these military industrial complex companies that are like, wait a minute, guys, we need a little bit of war? Are they trying to push Russia to get strong with BRICS? Is that a good thing for the world? I don't know. But the most important thing we have to study is motive. Last night, my dad and I are sitting there. We're talking about different countries that have been destroyed because of war. And he says, how do they rebuild these countries? How do they do it? I said, major banks come in, like a Chase, like a BlackRock. Hey, $400 billion, we'll rebuild your country at such and such. And if the country doesn't pay the money back, what do you think is the collateral? Your natural resources. The banks are going to get their money. Like imagine if you say, hey, I need $500,000. You go to Joey, I'll give you $500,000. Based on what? Back it up based on $1 million equity you have in your property. If you don't return $500,000 to me within a year, I own your land. Collateral, right? So these big banks are going to come in and say, oh, let's
kind of what China do to some of these African, axis, exactly what China does to these African countries. To be quite honest with you. I mean, actually that and France and some countries in the EU as well. I mean, their hands ain't clean either.
Rebuild Ukraine, $400 billion. What if we can't pay back? Don't worry, we're going to get your natural resources. You got plenty. Hey, we got to get this Putin knocked out of the way. Why? Because the number one country in the world with natural resources is not us. It's Russia. $75 trillion. And there's a man in the way. You know what his name is? Putin. That guy's got to get out the way so we can go in Russia and do business. It's a lot of money. The more you and I
mean, we can do business. Yeah, that's actually true. Russia has a lot of resources. A lot. I mean, a big ass forest, bro. They got this crazy ass forest. I know they got all the wood and the lumber in the world. I mean, yeah, I can see that. Sitting on $75 trillion of resources. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. If I was a leader of a country and we absolutely need it, shit, I go balls to the walls too for it. But I could see now why Trump wants to be cool with Russia, because he sees like, bro, we're not gonna do no business and get no type of access to your resources if we're beefing with you. But if we can get some type of trade deal going on with Russia, I mean, shit, F China then in that case. But like I said, though, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure Americans would lose their fucking mind if we just start working with, actually, hold on. We wouldn't really have a right to lose our minds. Like, we're just trading in one communist for another.
No motives.
So, a communist for an oligarch. No, I'll put that as a vote in the chat. Which you want, the communist or the oligarch?
We can understand why every one of these guys are presenting their argument the way they are. And then you will be responsible on whose motives you believe and whose motives you don't. But at the end of the day, history will tell us whose position was right and whose wasn't. Sometimes we have to wait a year or two and sometimes decades to find out if you were right or others were right. That takes a while until we find that out. If you got value out of this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.
All right, now let's get to my man's Lincoln's video. Appreciate the support, my man. Now, this video is it's pretty much getting into a deeper look into what's going on in Ukraine. All right, let's go.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
He looked angry. at that. It wasn't planned.
Putin called this a special military operation, but it's clear this is a full-scale invasion.
Была паника, истерика,
Было
слезы.
Как у нас пламя было выше дома.
We're like in a cellar. I'm not sure if it's like deep enough to help us to survive.
Russian troops and tanks have entered Ukraine on all fronts. All these cities are under attack, including the capital of Kyiv, which has become Putin's main target. Many are sheltering in basements and metro stations across Ukraine. There have been hundreds of casualties, and over 500,000 Ukrainians have been forced to flee their homes. This is one of Europe's largest wars since World War II. Since then, Europe's map has been shaped by political alliances. But now, Putin wants to redraw Europe's map by force.
Современная Украина целиком и полностью была создана Россией.
Putin has long claimed Ukraine belongs to Russia and they are one people.
We're not just close neighbors, we're one nation.
But Ukraine is a sovereign nation with its own language, culture, and political system. And while the two countries do have a shared history, Ukraine has fought hard for its own identity. Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire in the 18th and 19th centuries. In 1917, the Russian Revolution brought down the empire and the region spiraled into a civil war. Ukraine briefly gained independence from Russian rule, but was quickly taken over by the newly created Soviet Union as one of its first republics. Over the next decade, the Soviet Union brutally expanded its control, and by the end of World War II, it forged a sphere of influence over here, while the West held its influence over here, essentially dividing Europe and marking the beginning of the Cold War.
Wow.
The Soviet Union installed communist governments on their side, which were easy for them to control. But the West developed into democracies with capitalist economies. The deep ideological divide fueled distrust and tensions between the two sides, and soon these spheres hardened into military alliances. In 1949, these countries, along with the US and Canada, formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, and promised to defend each other from invasion. A few years later, these countries joined the Soviet-led Warsaw Pact alliance, and each side built up its military to protect itself from the other. Europe remained this way for decades, until one side finally collapsed. By late 1991, republics like Ukraine began declaring independence from Soviet domination. The Soviet Union dissolved into 15 independent countries, including a much weaker.
Remember, and like I said, the argument from the Russian side is that those protests were paid for by government or our US NGOs.
Russia. And the Soviet sphere of influence disappeared as many countries overthrew their communist governments. Even though the Cold War ended, the alliance on the other side of Europe was still going strong. In fact, it was expanding. In 1999,
and what was the promise? That they wasn't going to go past Germany. But they went ahead and got into Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary. I mean, come on now, guys. Let's be like, now that we watched the other video, we kind of see what they did and how this video is kind of framing it as if it was okay and we didn't make those promises. But now that we got that context filled in, I know it is funny to watch these videos and how they kind of leave out parts of history.
Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic joined NATO.
Oh, guys, and let's make sure we like the video. Go ahead and double tap that screen, guys. Let's get us to 100 likes. So, yes, double tap that screen and get the likes up. Appreciate the support. Let's keep going.
In 2004, 7 more countries joined. That moved NATO into the old Soviet sphere of influence, making NATO's border with Russia the longest it's ever been. Belarus, Ukraine, and Georgia were now the last post-Soviet countries left between Russia and NATO. But Ukraine and Georgia both wanted to join NATO for a long time, and that made them prime targets for Russia. Ukraine became a NATO partner in 1994, which brought them a step closer to becoming a member.
Україна буде в НАТО. Це історична подія для нашого народу.
And in 2013,
even though Putin said that, no, you guys aren't supposed to, even though US said that if you try to do that, Putin's going to attack you, and they ignored each and every one of those warnings. It's kind of hard to feel bad for Ukraine when you've been warned multiple times throughout history throughout history and through multiple administrations, and you still choose to do what you've been warned about. And then when the result popped off that you've been warned about, you want to cry. Like, sorry, it's just so hard for me to feel bad for, the Ukrainian leader right now, of Zelensky. I feel bad for the Ukrainian people, of course, but the leader, nah.
They reached an association agreement with the European Union. But when it came time to sign the deal, Ukraine's pro-Russian government refused. Instead, they chose to strengthen ties with Russia. After the decision was announced, hundreds of thousands of protesters took to the streets to demand the agreement be signed. After months of peaceful protests, the Ukrainian president cracked down and killed more than 100 people, sparking more protests, which eventually drove the president out of office and the country. This meant Putin was losing political influence over Ukraine. So he decided to use force instead. First, he invaded and annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. Then, Russia-backed separatists captured the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk and declared them independent of Ukraine. Since then, Ukraine has been locked in a conflict with Russia that has killed 14,000 people and displaced nearly 2 million. For nearly 8 years, Putin has held on to these regions, destabilizing Ukraine and keeping it from moving closer to the West. But in November 2021, Putin decided to go all in. Satellite images showed at least 100,000 Russian troops and military equipment piling up along the border of Ukraine. Putin repeatedly denied any plans to invade, but weeks later, he presented his demands to the West.
I mean, bro, why would he tell you his military plan?
His main demand was that NATO stop expanding and move its military borders back to where they were in 1997.
Yeah, where y'all promised. Yes. Now it would be absolutely wild for NATO just to be like, yeah, guy, you're out. All y'all are out. We got to move things back to what we promised, Russia, we were going to do. I doubt that's going to happen. But if they can just keep their hands off Ukraine, I think Putin will be happy enough. But if the idea is to push NATO back to its original bound, oh man, I don't think he can pull that one off. That's doing a lot.
Away from Russia's. Western leaders rejected his demands. Instead, they put forces on standby and reinforced their military presence in Eastern Europe. Back at Ukraine's border, Russian troops continued to gather. And over here, along its border with Belarus, Russia began conducting huge military drills. On February 21st, the threat of war became real.
Считаю необходимым принять уже давно назревшее решение. Незамедлительно признать независимость и суверенитет Донецкой Народной Республики.
I mean, he's not wrong by an overdue decision because, like I said, NATO's been violating what they said for a minute now. So, to be honest, yeah, it kind of is on Putin. He should have took action earlier and it probably wouldn't have got this bad. But, hey, it is what it is, right? Here we are.
Луганской Народной Республики.
His troops immediately crossed the Ukrainian border into Russian-backed separatist regions under the pretense of peacekeeping. Ukraine announced a state of emergency, and President Zelensky made a direct appeal to the Russian people.
Война лишит гарантий всех. Гарантий безопасности не будет больше ни у кого. Кто от этого пострадает больше всего? Люди.
Give up.
Кто этого не хочет больше всего? Люди. Кто может этого не допустить? Люди.
Hours later, on February 24th, Putin launched a full-scale invasion in Ukraine.
Специальной военной операции.
World leaders have spoken out against Russia's invasion.
We condemn this barbaric attack and the cynical arguments to justify it.
I mean, bro, all you have to do is cut the shit, though. Like, let's be honest. It's like y'all pretty much saying that, hey, yo, F Putin and what he wanted, we're gonna go say he's bad for pretty much what, standing on what he told us for what, NATO going over that red line, and now what? Now that Putin done acted on what he said he was gonna do, it's all his fault. I don't know about that one, guys. That just that don't make too much sense. Sorry.
This hideous and barbaric venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure.
Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
Anti-war protests have broken out around the world, including in Russia, despite the risk of arrest. Neighboring nations have opened their borders as hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians attempt to flee. NATO's response force has been activated for the first time in history, and the US has sent additional troops to Eastern Europe. But in many ways, the world is treading carefully. Putin controls the world's largest arsenal of nuclear weapons and has already threatened anyone who might interfere.
Кто бы ни пытался помешать нам, должны знать, что ответ России будет незамедлительным и приведет вас к таким последствиям, с которыми вы в своей истории еще никогда не сталкивались.
Man, that was what had everybody on noticed. When he said that, all he pretty much said was, all right, look, superpowers or the rest of y'all that got nukes that might want to get antsy. I mean, bro, if you guys get involved with this, I mean, bro, it could be World War III right now, today. Quit playing with me. Pretty much what he just said. That's what put America in our seat. That's what put Britain, that's what put everybody in their seat right there and then. We're like, okay, well, we can dash out money, but as far as fighting this man, he just already said that he's willing to use nukes to kind of, bring us all into a nuclear Armageddon over Ukraine. Yeah, we're not doing that. Like, good luck, Ukraine. Here's billions of dollars to go lose a war.
So countries around the world are imposing some of the harshest economic sanctions to slow Putin down and sending tons of military aid to support Ukraine. For now, Russian forces keep pushing deeper, but Ukraine is fighting back.
Захищаємо нашу незалежність, нашу державу. І так буде й далі.
And all righty now. All right, I ain't gonna lie. That was actually a decent video. I enjoyed it. Hey, shout out to my man Lincoln. It may not have had the effect that you wanted, but hey, though, I listened to it. Did I not? Did I not? Well, all right, guys, let's get on to the next video because let's see here. Boom. Video, because like I said, here at S.E.T Media, we like to keep our foot on China's neck. All right, let's go.
Welcome to the Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Exactly as predicted. Folks, the heat is being turned up on China. But once again, if you turn on the TV, if you listen to the media, they'll tell you that Trump is caving. Oh, he's backing off. He's retreating. He's chickening out. It's absolutely wild that those are the reports that we're getting, considering what's actually happening here. Again, it's almost as if the leftist media is pushing Chinese propaganda, as if China's winning here, when what's really happening here is now China is facing a multifaceted, multi-nation pressure campaign. The heat is being turned up on China like never before, as the Trump administration is pulling the rest of the world into alignment against them. Let me show you guys what's really going on here, despite what the media is saying. But before we get into any of that, this video is actually brought to you guys by a sponsor, so let's play that clip.